Welcome to Fall, Rise, Give, a space where we invite you to dig into the real cause of your suffering, looking at opportunities for growth with a change in your beliefs, thoughts, and actions so you can be your true self and be inspired. Join us as we explore life's ups and downs and navigate the twists and turns, sharing stories of resilience, hope, and the transformative power of giving back. Whether you're looking for a change, in recovery, or simply seeking inspiration, this podcast is your go-to for candid conversations, raw emotions, and a whole lot of heart. Tune in and discover how to fall, rise, and give back on life's extraordinary journey. Well, here we are another week, another episode of the Fall, Rise, Give podcast. I'm Bartender Bob, that's Kumar. Turn struggles into opportunities by being your true self and helping others. Kumar, hey, what a great week! I actually kayaked for the first time in 2 years this week. It was a really good, experience, really good time to get out there and go on the Mississippi River.
That's awesome. I've only kayaked once, I think, in my life, and it was hard. There's a lot of muscles that go into kayaking. I actually did it in Hawaii, in Kauai, Hawaii. And we kayaked to, with the whole family, we kayaked to this drop-off spot. And as soon as you get off the kayaks, there's just a bunch of shitty mud everywhere. And then you're hiking in 1.5 miles in shitty mud. And your shoes are falling off, and you're not prepared for this. It is just the most horrifying physical experience I've ever done in my life. And we get there, and the guy's carrying a cooler. I don't know how the hell he's carrying a cooler and a bunch of backpacks and sandwiches for us. And we get there, and the waterfall is the most majestic thing in this whole world. It was the most incredible thing I'd ever seen. And you can actually go swim in the back of it. And somehow my son, I think he was like maybe, God, I want to say he was like maybe 9 or 10, swims in the back of that. I'm jumping in and trying to get in the waterfall, trying to save his butt. But that ended up being one of the most magical things, swimming with my son underneath this waterfall. And then I had to get back on, hike for 1.5 miles in the mud, and then get in these kayaks, and you're just like exhausted. So that's my kayak experience. I am never going to kayak again in my whole life. I just want to get that out front now. Never say never, but I just don't plan on into kayaking ever again.
If you ever come visit me in the metropolis of Ferryville, Wisconsin, we've got 191 people. Monique and I have 4 kayaks, so you're welcome to jump on a kayak. We'll go on the Mississippi River. I promise you there won't be 1.5 miles of anything. We can just basically sit back and just kind of paddle away and go.
Yeah.
And we can have sandwiches back at my house. It'll be fine. It'll be fun.
Okay. I do miss the Mississippi. It's a really wide river and it's relatively calm. I don't ever see any rapids in the Mississippi. So yeah, it is fun down there. I've driven through that area so many times in my life through vacations and stuff. So yeah, that's something I'll add to my bucket list. Let's plan on that. It's a lot easier to kayak in the Midwest than it is on the West Coast with all the rapids and all the crazy rivers.
Oh, absolutely. So today is our 10th show, which is cool. Yep. We have something new today that we have not done yet. So why don't you introduce our guest?
Yeah, let me introduce our guest. I'll do that in a second. Maya's here with us. Super exciting. But our 10th show, if you want to call it a show, I had an amazing week this week. Super out of my comfort zone, just blown away as far as the stress and the mental fatigue of it. But through all of the stuff that we're talking about, all the tools that we have, I ended up having a really good week. And what's really interesting is the topic today is about the heart chakra and the heart and the 4th chakra. And it's really the love chakra. And it's love beyond yourself. It could be a romantic love. It could be love for a parent, love for a child. But it's love beyond yourself, kind of the unconditional love. And so this particular chakra sits at the center. The lower chakras that we talked about the last few weeks are the physical chakras. We're now entering into the spiritual chakras. And why I talk about the chakras is because they're about energy. They're energies in your body that have impact on your emotional, physical, mental states. And the heart chakra sitting in the center is really amazing because it's all about big, big energy is what I call it. If your heart is open, when you're in love, when you're kind, compassionate, when you're forgiving people, you have a lot of energy. When your heart is closed, you're angry, you're frustrated, you're resentful towards people, you don't have a lot of physical energy. And so that's what the topic is about. And one of the most amazing people that I know that I talk to on a regular basis is a woman named Maya. I haven't known her for years and years, but I feel like I've known her probably for past lifetimes. She is incredible. She works incredible hours. She's got tons of energy. She has two young kids, and she's one of the most spiritual persons, and constantly dedicated towards caring about others more than about herself. And so, with that introduction, I want to kind of hand off to Maya and just welcome her, our first guest of the show. Welcome, Maya.
Thank you so much, Kumar.
We need to have our studio audience clap now. I mean, we get the golf clap going.
Yeah.
That was a wonderful introduction.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you. I feel a little guilty saying this, but Kumar, we're going to have to revoke your PNW card and ship you back to the Midwest if you're not going to go kayaking.
Maybe kayaking in the Pacific Northwest lakes or the Sound rather than the river.
Sound.
Okay.
We'll let you stay then.
So Maya, have you kayaked before?
I have. I love kayaking. My family has a place up in the San Juan Islands, and we get kayaks up there whenever we can. My first kayaking trip was hilarious. Well, hilarious from the point of view of a sister. I was probably 12, so my younger brother was about 10, and we were kayaking around Lopez Island, and we pulled off for a snack, and he had just discovered pocket knives, and he thought the pocket knives were the coolest thing in the world. And so he asked my older brother if he could use a pocket knife to slice an apple. And he sliced the apple straight through his finger and busted his tendon. Oh. And we had to kayak back. Oh, it was a mess. It was great. I loved it. I'm a horrible person.
It was great. I loved it. That was my brother hurt himself. It was so much fun.
It was so much fun.
With that, with that, let me just say that I love kayaking just because it gets me out and it gives my head to clear up, you know, yeah. and that's why I personally enjoy kayaking. I get out in the nature and I get to see all the beauty that's all around me. So speaking of beauty, I can see by your smile and I can see by just the conversation that you and I have had at the beginning before Kumar jumped on that you are a beautiful person. So let me ask you this question: who is Maya?
Maya is a mother of two sons, a chef, a sister, a daughter, and a recovering alcoholic. Mm-hmm.
So what made you want to jump onto our show and be our first guest?
So I met Kumar a few months ago, and like he said, we just kind of fit, I guess. I get a lot from everything he says, and I really enjoy talking to him. I feel like I learn about myself after pretty much every conversation that we have. And when he said he was looking for a guest, I was ready to go.
You know, the cool thing about Kumar is that like he and I went to high school together. We went to middle school together, didn't talk to each other for a long time. And you are correct about that. So when I have conversations with Kumar, when I'm done, I feel, you know, a little lighter. I feel like, you know, I've had the troubles. I've had somebody to talk to, you know, that's kind of had the same upbringing as I have, or at least in the same area that I grew up in, and knows some of the stuff that I know. And so it's really cool to have that and to have the opportunity to talk to a friend on a daily basis, or, you know, a weekly basis, or however often we talk to each other.
It's nice to have someone that seems to understand you without having to put in the extra words and say extra things. You know, you can just say what's on your heart and have someone that gets it. And Kumar is one of those special people that you have that with.
I agree.
I think that it would be hard not to have that with him.
So you mentioned that you're a mother and a chef. So do the two of those go together? I mean, are your kids like get the best Kraft macaroni and cheese ever, or what?
My kids are the pickiest eaters in the world. I currently, I run a cafe kitchen, and so I make, oh my God, hundreds. I think I average about 500 portions of eggs every 3 days.
Wow.
My kids won't even eat my scrambled eggs. They only want their dad's. And I'm like, you ungrateful little bugs. I do this for a living. My eggs are so good. But they don't like my food at all.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Can I throw in a scrambled egg story here real quick? When we were kids, we used to go camping, and I didn't like scrambled eggs or steak for a long time because my dad would cook when we went camping, and eggs always were scrambled eggs. They always had shells in them. They always were terrible. They were runny, burnt, and had shells in them every single time. And I don't know how he did that. And then steak was like my leather boots. It was like that, but burnt. So burnt leather boots. And then, he would have the barbecue sauce and the other sauce, and he was like, "You kids need to learn how to eat this without sauce." I'm like, "Dad, that's the shittiest tasting steak ever." He ruined steaks for me for life. I'm a hamburger guy now because of that, because of crappy steaks when I was a kid. And the first time I ate scrambled eggs in a long time was when my person, not my partner, not my girlfriend, my person, Monique, made me some scrambled eggs with goat cheese in them. And I'm like, I don't know if I'll like those. Those were the bomb.
Mm-hmm.
The bomb.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to say it, but I just had to.
Yeah.
I had to let that story
I'm
out.
going to interject it there
So
if I can too. I got an egg story. Yesterday, my lovely wife, she made an egg souffle. I usually eat scrambled eggs pretty much 2 or 3 times a week. She made this egg souffle out of an Bon Appetit magazine. Jill is her name. She's not the best cook in the world, but what she is a master of following the recipe. And as Maya, as a chef, knows, if you follow the recipe, you cannot screw it up. And if you pay attention while you're cooking and you're present, the stuff's going to turn out pretty well. And an egg souffle with Italian sausage, peppers, onions, cheese. I mean, you just can't go wrong with this stuff. It's just crumbled white sourdough bread. I mean, we're talking about food here, which is one of the greatest joys of life. And, it wasn't very heart healthy, heart's our topic today, but it was the best. It was the bomb, like you said, Bob.
So how much longer is this going to go? Because now I'm really hungry.
I am too. Can we take a break?
No.
Breakfast time. Kumar, that Jill's going to listen to this and say, "What do you mean I'm not a good cook?"
Yeah, well, she's a great at following recipes, so ends up being a great cook. But she does listen to this right away when we publish these on Mondays. So yeah.
Right. So do you have a trick for us, Maya, that we can do when we're cooking that'll make our everything taste better?
Do it right.
Do it right? Is that what you said?
Yeah, don't fuck it up.
That's some great advice. So a lot of times, like apparently some people struggle in the kitchen, right? I enjoy playing around in the kitchen, making things up. So let's talk about, since I said the word struggle, let's talk about struggles in life and things like that. You mentioned that in your opening that you're a recovering alcoholic. I'm assuming that might be one of your biggest struggles in life.
It is. So I come from a family with a lot of addiction problems. I was adopted at age 5 by my uncle, my biological mother's brother, and his wife, because the state took my younger brother and I away from my biological mother, who was an alcoholic drug addict. She eventually passed away in 2012 due to complications from drinking and using her whole life. When I was probably about 3.5, 4, my biological mother was so deep into her addiction, she hadn't been able to hold a job, and she essentially would leave me with her pedophile drug dealer, and I was the payment for her drugs. She would just dump me there for the weekend, and then she would dump me at her mom's house, and I would sit in the carport. I'd pull blankets and pillows out into the carport waiting for her, and sometimes she wouldn't come back for weeks. And eventually someone noticed, and the state came in and they took us away, and they were going to separate us and put my little brother and I in different foster homes. But my biological mom's brother, that was not something that he could live with. So he and his wife adopted us. And when they took us in, they were almost done. My older sister was 3 months shy of graduating high school, and they took on a 5-year-old and a 2-year-old. And my adoptive dad, he's the person I call dad. He was also, he struggled with addiction his whole life. He never found a program. He tried, various 12-step programs that didn't really work for him. So he was a dry drunk, um, which was okay. But it was,
What does a dry drunk mean for somebody that doesn't know?
so when you are getting sober, there are different ways. You can just stop, right? And not work on yourself and healing your heart and your mind and your soul, or creating a spiritual connection. And when you do it that way, your thinking doesn't change. You live in a very dark place. And it's hard and it's painful. I think for most addicts and alcoholics, we use to self-medicate. It's our solution, for a long time, for internal pain and sorrow and things that are just too hard to deal with. And you can take away the drugs and alcohol, but that doesn't touch the underlying problems. So you're not actively using any substances, but you haven't touched any of that pain and that anger and the sorrow and the stuff inside of you. So you're still unhappy at your core. You're still living in a dark place, and that's what a dry drunk is. When weed was legalized in Washington, my dad started smoking weed regularly, and that helped. That's such a weird thing to say, but there wasn't. He was less growly, I guess. My dad was an incredible man. He was such. I'm so blessed and lucky to have him. I idolize that man. We lost him in January. He passed away from lung cancer, and that was devastating.
I'm sorry to hear that. So, listening to your backstory, I'm proud of you for making it to this point in your life. I mean,
it was,
to have that pile of all of that thrown on you as a little child, and I mean, to sit in the carport and wondering where your mother is at 3 and 5 years old. I mean, that's a shitty hand to be dealt.
It is, and it's something that I struggled with a lot for a long time. That was a wound that kind of shaped my life. It blocked a part of me. I locked away a part of me for a very long time. And then I've had other instances, sexual abuse, particularly when I was in the Army. At 18 years old, I was raped by a fellow soldier, and I was pregnant at the time, and it was so traumatic that I lost my first child. And that sucked, and that was hard, but also it was nothing compared to the fact that the military rallied behind him. I was married at the time. My partner was stationed, my ex-husband was stationed up here in Washington, and I was down in Georgia. But because I was married, they basically threatened me and told me that if I didn't shut up, keep my mouth shut, stop trying to cause problems and press charges and whatnot, they would bring me up on charges for adultery.
Wow.
And then the guy, he had been a former military police officer and still had a lot of friends in the military police, and they kept, quote unquote, losing any charges I tried to, like, any reports I would make. And that was the most traumatic part of it, right? Like I had dedicated literally my life to something that I believed in and cared about and was proud of. I was so proud to put on my uniform every morning and to serve my country. And then this happened. And I didn't shut up about it. And eventually they switched things around so that every time we would form up, I had to stand shoulder to shoulder with this guy. That was their way of trying to get me to be quiet. And so that mixed with, the trauma of my early childhood, I formed the shell inside of me. I locked my heart away. I didn't really let people in. All of my relationships, family, friends, lovers, were somewhat surface level. And that was fine for a long time. And then I had kids, and that shell was still there. I was a mother with two amazing, wonderful, beautiful, ridiculous, loud, silly, goofy boys. But I couldn't open that shell around my heart even for them. And that made me feel things that, like, it was such a confusing place, and I was so angry at myself, and I was so sad, and I was so scared, and I felt guilty and like a terrible person, because I mean, they're my kids, that's supposed to be the deepest, most true love in the world. And I had a block in it. And so I started self-medicating. I started with weed. I got to the point that I was going through they've got marijuana vape cartridges. It's like concentrated vape cartridges. And I was going through probably 4 a week, which is a lot.
That is a lot.
Yeah. And then I was drinking every night. I was working in fine dining, and at Italian places, right? And so I needed to know the entire wine list to make sure that I was cooking appropriately to match the wine list. And our bartenders were always creating fun new cocktails that they wanted us to try. And so I was drinking all the time. And then I went to another place, a really great restaurant, a seafood place in downtown Seattle, but it had an open kitchen, which means that the guests get to see you cook right in front of them. And when we would get too stressed out, or we would look like we were getting anxious, we would be handed half a Valium to kind of calm us down. And if we were dragging too much, someone would say, hit the dish pit, and you'd go into the dish pit, and someone had a crushed up Adderall for you to snort to pick you up. And then, you had your end of shift cocktail. And then I went to another place, and the lead cook there was, his side hustle was dealing cocaine. Actually, I guess his side hustle was cooking. He was a cocaine dealer. And I'm pretty. I mean, I'm not trying to be egotistical here, but I'm pretty and funny and nice. And so I didn't have to pay ever. And it just got really out of control really quick. But it took me away. I guess it didn't take me away from the pain I had been living in and the shame that I had been living in, but it hid it from myself. It made it easier to be me. Yes.
So did the addiction become after you became a mother? Or were you doing dabbling in drugs and alcohol all through your teenage years and through your Army years?
So I had a period when you're in the Army, at least at this point in time. So 2008, 2009, you'd stub your toe and they would give you a month's supply of Percocet, right? Like they handed out Percocet like candy. And so I used that. I used narcotic painkillers for a while, but it didn't trigger that addiction. Like I still got everything done. I was still, I don't know. It didn't stick with me. I never had a problem when I ran out of them, right? When I ran out of them, that was that. That's cool. I didn't need to go find them. I wasn't seeking them. Drinking, I actually did not drink until I was 18 years old. up until 18, the most I had ever had to drink was a quarter glass of champagne at my sister's wedding when I was 17.
Wow.
But when I started drinking from that first time outside of my sister's wedding, I was drinking alcoholically. I had a quarter of a screwdriver, and that was followed within an hour by chugging 3/4 of a bottle of Grey Goose.
You went from let's have a little orange juice with this thing. Let's just drink the bottle. The hell with it.
Yes. I drank a lot in the Army days. When I got out of the Army, I went a couple years where I didn't drink or use, but reflecting back, I was filling that hole with other things, with work mostly. I can sort of switch things in and out, or at least I used to be able to switch things in and out, right? So I could substitute the bottle for working 120 hours a pay period or more. And it still kind of had the same effect. It took me away from my heart and my head, right? But I lost control after I became a mom.
So how long has it been since you quit drinking?
I will have 2 years in September.
Here, another golf clap for you.
Oh, thank you. God willing.
That's awesome. I mean, is it still a daily struggle?
No, I don't think so. The substance is not a daily struggle. But it can be a struggle to live in myself sometimes, to keep my heart open and to, I'm sorry if you hear the children in the background.
No, that's okay.
Being themselves.
Do we have to give them credit on the podcast? That's what I want to know.
Emotional sobriety can be maybe not a daily struggle, but a frequent struggle. As far as alcohol and drugs, though, no. I very rarely have urges to use or drink. I still cook with wine and it doesn't faze me. I make food for the Wine Academy I work for a college, and the college also has a wine academy where they make their own wines. So I have to be around and listening to, the breakdown of the flavor profiles of the different wines as I'm creating dishes. And that doesn't bother me. It doesn't faze me. I don't want to pick up and use. But to be truly sober, there has to be more, right? It's not just, it goes back to being that dry drunk, right? I don't want to live like that. I don't want to live in that guilt and that shame and that pain. So there's a lot that you have to work on. You have to make a conscious effort to connect with a higher power, to keep yourself open to people, to help other people. And through becoming sober, it was really hard at the beginning. And I had not really done anything quote unquote bad, right? I'm what some people refer to as a high bottom drunk. I still had my car. I still had my job. I still had my house. I still have my partner. Still have the kids. Still, I hadn't really lost anything, but on the inside, I was nothing. I barely looked at myself in the mirror. I'd glance to make sure that my shirt was straight, and my hair wasn't flying everywhere, but I couldn't bear to look at myself. I wanted to die. I genuinely believed that the trauma of having me as a mother would be so much worse than the trauma of me killing myself.
Please don't ever do that. Please
definitely not.
Don't ever do that.
But I had this moment, my kind of aha moment. I went out with a girlfriend, my lead bartender and server, and we were so wasted. and she and I got into a fight, and I ended up storming out of the house that we were at. I had my purse and my wallet, but I did not have my shoes. I did not have my phone. I did not have my car keys. And I was too drunk to know where I was coming from, right? So I couldn't go back to where she was. So I wandered around for a while. I eventually completely blacked out. And the next morning-ish, I woke up in a, designer cocktail dress, no shoes. My feet were bloody. My whole body hurt because of how much I'd been walking. And I was leaned up against the tree next to a highway on-ramp. And there was a homeless guy laying 25 feet away from me with a needle still in his arm. And I woke up, and that was, I don't know. I woke up, the sun was barely rising, and I just had this clarity moment that was going to be me. That person with a needle in their arm that looked like they hadn't bathed in God knows how long. That was going to be me if I didn't do something. And I realized that I needed help. So I went into a treatment center. I found a 12-step program, and my life has completely changed. And through that program and through working on myself and realizing, especially early sobriety, how difficult it was for me when I hadn't done anything terrible. I hadn't lost anything yet. I still struggled at the beginning to keep sober, and that gave me this clarity that put some cracks in that shell I'd had around my heart. My biological mother, she had done horrible things. Things that if I had done, would never be able to forgive myself for. So of course she couldn't get sober, because when she was sober, she had to look at what she had done. So of course she couldn't get sober. And that kind of put a crack in my shell, and I started to feel empathy.
So with your addiction, your addiction was strong and bad, but it wasn't as strong as your biological mother's addiction.
I'm not going to say it wasn't as strong as, it didn't go as long as. 35 years ago, the stigma, there's still a stigma around addiction right now, but it's significantly less. And there are many more options and a lot more help out there. Addiction is understood a little better by the mainstream population.
Well, I'm guessing that everybody that's listening to this has a loved one that is struggling or has struggled or, will struggle.
Yes.
With an addiction.
Yes. And it's more talked about. 35 years ago, it was this big shame that had to be hidden. So I think, because of the time, because of my personal knowledge of what addiction can do, I think that I just was able to get help sooner. I think that if I hadn't been given the opportunities that I was in regards to help, I very easily could have been in the same place that my biological mother was. I got help sooner.
I guess it'll always be a road to recovery, right? You're never truly all the way recovered. It's always a day at a time.
Yes.
And that's why they call it recovering alcoholics or recovering. Yeah, I just want to interject there for a second. It's fascinating as I hear people in different groups talk about it. The recovering it's never a ending. It's always a reminder that you're just one step away. It's a progressive disease is what they call it. And so it's interesting. So one of the things that you started to mention, Maya, was really fascinating, is that the dry sober or the dry drunk, and then to be truly sober, you need to work on this thing called emotional sobriety. And that's something that I was surprised by. I had never heard of it. Can you tell us more about that? What is emotional sobriety?
So emotional sobriety it's getting through the pain, right? So you're being aware, you have to really look at yourself. And you look where you mess up. You look at why you behave the way you behave. You look at the way you've acted in the past, and you kind of find a common theme. In the recovery program that I'm in, we call it character defects. I have a friend that calls it character defaults, and I prefer the character defaults. It's what life and our experience has taught us is the way to survive, right? And oftentimes, while those defaults may have served a purpose at one point to protect us from the world, they have gotten out of control and they become a detriment. And so you have to look at the way you behave. You have to look at your thinking, and you shift it. And that realization I had about my biological mother and her lack of ability to get sober, like I said, it kind of put a crack in that wall around my heart. And I was able to find forgiveness for her, which is something that I never ever thought that I would have been able to do. And in finding forgiveness for her, I was able to start forgiving myself. And I was able to start behaving differently. There's a little bit of fake it till you make it, right, in the beginning, but certain things become second nature. Rather than hiding away, I go downstairs and I play with my kids even when I don't feel like it. I do it, and I always end up happy that I have, and enjoying myself. And it's emotional sobriety is kind of just retraining the way you look at life into a healthy way, keeping yourself open and loving and letting other people into your heart and being there for other people.
So you mentioned a key word there, forgiveness. And Kumar and I have spoke about this in the past, that, you have to forgive yourself in order to move forward in a lot of things. I mean, you look like you have something to say, Kumar.
Yeah, I do. It's really interesting. I think that you mentioned the key word, forgiveness. As soon as you forgave your biological mother, that crack or that opening of your heart, instead of being closed, it opened up a little bit. And then you were able to forgive yourself. And then you immediately were able to feel the joy that you were blocking from your kids before. And you brought in the kids thing, both of you did. Kids, they're pure energy. All they have is love. They may get frustrated as children, whatever, but they're pure emotional love. And just like dogs or pets are as well, right? All they have is pure emotions. They don't really have any sort of a negative energy from my side. They may have a little frustration here and there where they have to potty or get hungry or whatever, but as a whole, they're pure love and pure joy. And to opening up to that, to experience that love, we kind of have to be in a place of forgiving ourselves, forgiving others, and really opening our heart. And so, as I talked about this energy piece, Maya, any last ways that you've been able to open your heart and share with others? I know that you do a lot of service for a lot of other people, and you always are very compassionate towards others and kind of coaching them as they go through this journey of recovery. Any parting thoughts about how you help others or how others can find their true self by helping others?
I think that helping others is the only way to find your true self. You keep your heart open, and you approach others with an understanding that you would give a child or a loved one, and it teaches you a lot about yourself in the process. And that could be helping clean out the garage, or when someone loses someone, showing up with cookies or sending flowers. Or the way that I find helps the most, and the way that I get the most out of when people help me, is just through being there, by reminding people that they aren't alone, that someone cares, that they matter, that they don't have to face the scary, hard things in life by themselves, because there's someone who, even if they don't quite understand, is willing to hold your hand through it. And that's, I think, something that gets lost a lot in our world. We're so busy and going all the time, and it's easy to get caught up in oneself. When you get caught up in yourself, I think it's very easy to lose the type of person that you want to be. I'm proud of who I am today. And I couldn't be me if I hadn't lived through those things. I couldn't be there for the others the way that I am if I hadn't lived through those things.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of Fall Rise Give, where we explore stories of resilience, growth, and giving back. If you enjoyed today's episode, please visit our website at www.fallrisegive.com. Also consider subscribing to our podcast on your favorite platform and leaving us a review. Your feedback helps us to continue to bring you inspiring stories. Stay tuned for our next episode, and remember, every fall is a chance to rise, and every rise is an opportunity to give. Until next time, keep falling, rising, and giving. This is Fall Rise Give, produced by podcastforhire.com. Thank you for listening.